going, and it's very interesting. It was an illegal investigation, Major. It was an illegal investigation. It was started illegally. Everything about it was crooked. Every single thing about it. There were dirty cops. These were bad people. You look at McCabe and Comey, and you look at Lisa and Peter Strzok. These were bad people. And this was an attempted coup. This was an attempted takedown of a president. And we beat them. We beat them. So the Mueller report, when they talk about obstruction, we fight back. And you know why we fight back? Because I knew how illegal this whole thing was. It was a scam.
On this episode of Just Informed Talk, Overstock CEO Patrick Byrne shocks the world by resigning his position on national TV and making claims that he was recruited by the deep state and Obama's FBI to help set up the Trump administration and other Republicans with the Russia collusion hoax. But some things about his story are not adding up, and the Anons are already picking it apart. So we're going to take a look at what they've been finding, and we're going to take a look at other breaking news stories. So you guys want to stick around and check this out. Hey guys, a quick word from the sponsor of this video, redpillliving.com. They want you to know all about this new product, Kela Cream EDTA Chelation Therapy Cream. Did you know heavy metals are poisonous? They're in our air, water, food, and workplace, affecting everybody. Unfortunately, humans don't have an effective mechanism to remove lead and heavy metal toxins. Calcium disodium EDTA chelation therapy has been proven to be the most effective way to remove heavy metals from our bodies. Unfortunately, it's normally expensive, time-consuming, invasive, and inconvenient. There's now an easier, lower dose, and gentler way to remove heavy metals with Kela Cream EDTA Chelation Cream. It's affordable, non-invasive, and safe for all ages. As a bonus, it supports heart health and cardiovascular health. So if you guys want to get this great product, go visit redpillliving.com today and use the promo code Craig for 10% off your order. I hope you guys enjoy. Hi, I'm Craig, and welcome to another episode of Just Informed Talk. I always begin, as you know, by saying thank you to everyone who's hit that subscribe button. Please come here if you haven't. Click the big red subscribe button. Make sure you hit the bell for notifications. Today, we're picking up, obviously, where we left off, Q Post 3570. We have not had a new Q Post. That's because the 8chan website is down, so the boards where Q Posts are not up and running. For those of you who are not following the situation that closely, the owner of the website 8chan, Jim Watkins, decided to voluntarily pull the website down until he has a hearing in front of Congress where he's going to testify about the links that they are trying to make between 8chan and violent extremism, which is going to be a pretty epic hearing if all goes as I think it might. But with that being said, we're not going to have the board up until after that hearing, and I believe that hearing is scheduled for September 5th. So with that in mind, we still have incredible stories breaking every single day. It just gets crazier and crazier. But before we get into all of that, we're going to look at breaking news stories, plus the big story, which is this Overstock CEO out of nowhere jumps on live TV, announces his resignation, and says, by the way, I was working for the FBI to try to set up President Trump with the Russia collusion hoax and a bunch of other Republicans too. But there are some very fishy things about his story, so we're going to take a look at what the Anons have been picking up on and what's actually going or maybe going on there. Before we do that, I always encourage everyone to come back here to the landing page, watch these last videos, share them on your social media. And why do I say that? You guys already know. If you're new to this, I have to explain. There is an algorithmic suppression that is built in. It's a bias that is written into the algorithms that Google uses to aggregate content. So basically what has happened is content like mine and a bunch of other people who are competing with the mainstream media news's narrative, the quote-unquote authoritative, which I like to call authoritarian source for information that Google and YouTube have decided to back. They decide to give them a higher ranking than us in everything. So no matter what we do, our content will never come up for certain types of searches, and we have to fight that by sharing this content manually. What does that mean? There's a share button at the bottom of this video. Go click it, share it on any other social media you got, and that's how we get around it. So that's my whole spiel. If you don't know what QAnon the Grey Weekend is, great awakening is, please come here, watch this video. It'll give you all the info you need. But with that being said, let's get into the latest news stories. All right, so we're going to pick up on a story that we covered previously here on the channel, but we're going to pick up on what has happened. It looks like there's been a little bit of a backlash from Gillette going or getting woke. Apparently they got woke and now they are going broke, reporting a $12 billion loss, and I think it's $8 billion alone in the second quarter. So everyone out there, you know, I told you that I'm switching blades, and I'm sure you all did too. And look, the market has spoken. We do not want our corporations that make razor blades trying to tell us that they're the arbiters of truth and morality in society, okay? Because it's not, you're a blade company. Stick to what you do. You sell shaving blades for men. That's what I think. You stay in your lane, as they say. But this is a real story that's come out, and you can see now they've come back with these ads that are more targeted toward men, and they're trying to actually get that audience back, which, you know, once you've lost it, you know, who knows? We'll see what happens there. I just thought I'd bring that up as a interesting aside to everything that we're going to be covering here today, because it is a follow-up to a previous story reported here on the channel. Here's another story. The feds have subpoenaed 20 officers at the Manhattan prison where Jeffrey Epstein died. This is coming on the heels of reports that the officers inside the prison were warning Jeffrey Epstein's former cellmate that if he made any details about Jeffrey Epstein's death public, that his life would be in danger. Not to mention the fact that you got it like a B-rated cop movie where these guys claim that they fell asleep for 3 hours while Jeffrey Epstein was apparently suicided inside of his cell at the Manhattan Correctional Center where he was being held awaiting trial in New York. Now, this to me is an interesting story because we are trying to get down to the bottom of what has happened here, but who knows how much we'll ever be able to become public. Hopefully we'll be able to get the whole story and figure out how Jeffrey Epstein in one of the you would say one of the world's most secure holding facilities was allowed to kill himself after he had already made one attempt on his own life, allegedly, and that there was no surveillance, there was no cameras, nobody saw anything, and the guards were eating donuts and falling asleep in the break room. I mean, and then all the other suspicious stuff that happened with the strange arrivals, the moving of cells, the words, they heard screams coming from his cell about how he needs to breathe. So, you know, to me, this story continues to get worse and worse, not to mention the fact that a lot of people believe it was a extraction operation where he was removed and put into you know, possibly witness protection. Maybe he was abducted by aliens. Who knows? But what we do know is that the official story is that he is dead. So, you know, hey, take it with a grain of salt. It is what it is on the outside right now. And it seems like the DOJ is taking it seriously as far as trying to find out what happened at that detention facility. Here's another very interesting story. So if you guys remember, Rick Gates was a very popular name from the Mueller investigation early on. And apparently Obama's White House counsel, this man named Greg Craig, is on trial for multiple counts of basically working for Ukraine without registering as a foreign agent and then spreading information that would help him. It's a very long and convoluted story, but what was very interesting about this, in the trial today, Rick Gates came and testified against Greg Craig and says that Tony Podesta was one of the ones helping behind the scenes to orchestrate everything with these Ukraine deals. So we all know about Ukraine being a major point of contention for the deep state and Obama's administration. That's one of the ways they got rich. You know, they sold us out to the Ukrainians and the Chinese, allegedly. And we can only say that as an alleged offense because all we have is a set of circumstantial evidence to go on. Meaning you have lots of kickbacks, lots of people connected to Biden and others in the administration getting millions of dollars, including Mueller, Clinton, and the rest. They were getting millions and millions of dollars from Ukrainians and Chinese, supposedly, you know, independent, non-governmental actors. But we are starting to figure out that the people donating the money had very strong ties to the Communist Party in China and the corrupt party in Ukraine. So I'll leave that for you guys to read through. It's obviously an interesting article and it's an interesting story development that's come up today. So here we go. A couple other interesting things. Some names on the flight log. So I guess Naomi Campbell came out with this video where she basically is saying, just because I knew Jeffrey Epstein doesn't mean I'm guilty of all the things he is, which fair enough. I'll give her that. But what I won't give her is the fact that she's trying to distance herself so far away that she's making it seem as though they had almost no relationship whatsoever. And it's just really fascinating to see how, somebody who made multiple flights, as you can see here on, it would seem on Jeffrey Epstein's private plane, is coming out with this kind of message saying, the frightening conclusion here is that if the negative action of your neighbor, colleague, or even an associate can somehow make you guilty too, simply by association, then we indeed live in very worrying times. This affects us all. It's wrong, it's unfair, and it must be stopped. Well, yeah, fine. I will grant Naomi Campbell that we are not going to do this guilt by association thing that the left and the fake news media like to do to President Trump and his supporters all the time. But what we will say is that you have to understand that we all know what Jeffrey Epstein was involved in. You were one of the world's most famous models, spending copious amounts of time with him, and the whole entire premise of his arrest was based on the fact that he was trafficking women through modeling agencies. So you'd understand why a supermodel like Naomi Campbell, who spends an exorbitant amount of time with Jeffrey Epstein, would draw a lot of red flags for a lot of people. So, just thought I'd point that out. Another interesting one, people have been saying, did Chief Justice John Roberts ride on Jeffrey Epstein's plane? What it looks like is on these rosters, John Roberts is listed. Now, is that the same John Roberts? Could there be more than one John Roberts? That is up for, I guess, an investigation or whatever. But what's fascinating is if you look at the way that this is put down, they compare it to the fact that he flew on 2010 and 2011, and that back in that time period, you can see he was making more and more liberal rulings and joining the dissent against his quote unquote conservative side of the court. So, all I have to say is it's interesting to continue to see the connections that Jeffrey Epstein's web is weaving. And we're going to have to wait and see how all this shapes up. But you can tell at this point that Epstein was the keystone. Everything Q told us about this was very correct in that it's connected to more and more and more, and it's continuing to expand. And as it is expanding, we have this new set of revelations with regard to the Russiagate hoax that was perpetrated against the President of the United States. Now, why do I say that? Well, there's a new story coming out today talking about how the Overstock CEO resigns and then drops a bomb on live TV. Tech boss said he spied for FBI on Trump, Ted Cruz, and Marco Rubio. He also says in his interview that he was tasked to spy on Hillary Clinton, which immediately, for me, throws up 1,000 red flags. But with that being said, we're going to take a deeper look at this story. It's important to note, though, on the same day that this all happens, we have this cryptic, strange post from Kristen Gillibrand. And if you'll remember, Kristen Gillibrand was the hand-selected politician to replace Hillary Clinton and her Senate seat in New York State when Hillary Clinton left. So she is definitely Hillary Clinton's minion. And the fact that she puts this up here, what you could see is the video itself. There is actually a, if you can read it at the bottom, there's actually a subtitle where it's just this clip that keeps playing over and over again. What's your reaction to President Trump's threat, or to the president's threat? And he says, I think it's absurd, and I don't think he understands what he's saying. And this is talking about an actual news story that was on CNN where President Trump had said, look, we have all of these ISIS fighters detained, and a lot of them came from France and Belgium and Europe, other countries in Europe. So we want them to take custody of these people and put them in prison because President Trump said, look, I'm not going to put them in Guantanamo Bay for 50 years and have the taxpayers pay for this, right? So President Trump said we would just release them back into their country if they won't take them into custody, which she's responding to that question saying, I think he's absurd and I don't think he understands what he's saying. But what's even stranger about all of this is Evergreen, as you know, is the Secret Service code name of Hillary Clinton that Q has mentioned to us here on the boards before. Here's one example where basically Q is saying to us, I'll read the whole thing. It says, we have it all. The right people have the information. Good people are acting on the information. Think Google, think Eric Schmidt departure, think North Korea, many drafts, many shared users, foreign and domestic, variable access codes, fake emails, game forum comms, new intel revealed today, Gmail comms, renegade Evergreen, define Evergreen, when do you call a plumber, ongoing investigations require, and it gives us authorization from Q. And remember, what Q's been telling us since the beginning is that we've had access to all of their supposedly secret communications that they were using in this whole plot against President Trump and with regard to their many nefarious, criminal dealings. So we've had the information. The NSA's had it. We know how they were communicating. They had Gmail, where it seems like they would use the draft system, meaning they wouldn't actually send emails. But you got to understand, Google was in on this. Google is such a key integral part to this whole thing. When you go back to Eric Schmidt and you understand, like Q is saying here, this is all the way back in 2018, the connection to North Korea. Eric Schmidt was over there with Bill Richardson helping the North Koreans set up their own private, private internet network. What else do you think they were doing over there? A lot of people have suggested it was one of their many points at which they were installing this secret set of communications abilities that were being used to globally contact one another to set up these criminal operations, these global criminal operations, right? And you have to think about this logically. And as it says here, when do you call a plumber? So there's been leaks, right? And we'll see what this means. I have a feeling that what Kristen Gillibrand is saying with this post is that she's trying to send another one of those stupid coded messages to President Trump saying, I'm calling the bluff here, I'm calling the threat. But that's her game to play. As Q has said before, this is not a game, and this is all very real, and play at your own risk, as they would say. With that, it's good to remember back on July 30th, right before the Q board went down, also, Q asked us, how do you get ahead of a story, giving us this tweet from George Papadopoulos saying that the transcripts are out tomorrow, the first demonstrable proof to show that not only did we not collude, but the whole world was against us, and Donald Trump still won in 2016. When it's all said and done, the story will be of global effort to take us down that backfired big time. So remember this. When you look at this and you look back here, it's one of the last messages we got from Q, and you kind of look at what we're hearing here from Evergreen and all of these other stories, you got to think, are they trying to get ahead of something, right? And we're going to look at that story right now. Here's an interesting tweet I just wanted to bring up that kind of frames the whole stage for this. It says the mainstream liberal media are not going to cover this mushrooming hashtag Spygate scandal. It's clear they are going to cover it up instead. It's not just because they know exposing it would hurt Democrats, but it's also because they would expose their own complicity in this scandal. Yeah, I've been saying that for a very long time. The reason the mainstream media won't ask the question, won't ask President Trump about QAnon, they won't cover any of the stories that we end up having to cover here on this channel, and many others cover the same kind of content as well, to get around the mainstream media, is because for them to report on half of these stories, honestly, would mean that they've been lying to the American public for years, knowingly and willfully. But don't forget, as I say, Obama legalized propaganda. They know that they can legally lie to the American people if, who knows, if a former clown like John Brennan comes on the air and says something true, they can just parrot that all day. And they do. And they parrot those lies because of a few different reasons, and they're varied, and it goes from person to person. I don't want to make a broad assumption, but I can say this. It's fairly obvious that they will not expose this ever. They'll have to be forced to cover these stories one by one by one, and they're going to do everything they can to actively suppress it, just like the big tech companies do here on the website you're watching, YouTube, with the algorithms, and Google with the search results, and Facebook with kicking people off and banning content, and Twitter with suspending people and removing tweets. It's all a part of a broader effort. Talk about, oh, you're a conspiracy theorist. Well, no, there's actually a big conspiracy against people trying to have a conversation about what may have been happening and to do an investigation and to report on facts that are being brought forth as a part of ongoing investigations, right? And that's where we're at. President Trump, like you saw in the beginning of this, knows what he's up against. He knows what all this is. And here's a post that I wanted to bring up just in reference to what we're going to talk about here with this story about this Overstock CEO. Well, I guess before we get to that post, let's start here. Overstock CEO resigns and drops bombshell on live TV. This guy, Patrick Byrne, resigned from Overstock.com, I guess, and went on to television, did a bunch of different news shows. He was on Chris Cuomo. He was on, I think, Martha McCallum. I think that's her name. But basically, literally just goes up there and starts saying, look, it says here in the article, Burns said he was offered $1 billion bribe to keep his mouth shut about the fact that he was being played by the FBI to go out and to have these romantic encounters with this supposed Russian agent. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. And the way he tells his story, because it's kind of all over the place and it's very lacking in detail, is that back in 2015, he was recruited by the FBI. He had already worked with the FBI on a few different occasions, which is very strange to begin with. He said that at one time he helped the FBI find the murderer of one of his friends. Then at another time he helped the FBI. He says that he literally calls himself, quote unquote, his own Occupy Wall Street, where he went undercover on Wall Street and got a bunch of corrupt Wall Street players put in jail. Those are his words, not mine. And then he says he was approached in 2015 to start a relationship. Well, let's put it this way. He was being pursued, you could call it, according to him, by a woman whose name is Miss Butima, who's now in jail for not registering as a foreign agent, serving an 18-month sentence. But he says in 2015, he was approached by her, and they, hit it off, and she wanted access to Republicans, big Republicans, and she started getting access to these big Republicans. And I guess he went to the FBI, because he had already worked with the FBI, he had some sort of contact there for his clearance. He had a security clearance. So he reported to them that he was having this relationship with this Russian woman who wanted him to go to Russia to talk to Vladimir Putin and all this stuff. So his story basically says that the FBI came to him and said to keep the relationship going and to play it out, to see where it goes. So, I'm sorry if I'm getting the details wrong, because this guy's story is just all over the place. So if I sound all over the place, it's because you could watch the videos for yourself of them, but it's definitely a hard story to follow. But he says that the FBI was hoping to be able to target Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump and Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But he says that the FBI came to him and told him to break off the relationship. And when I don't even look, okay, before I butcher this guy's story any worse than I already have, let me just tell you that to sum it all up. He says the FBI came to him to get after President Trump and Marco Rubio, Ted Cruz, and Hillary Clinton. But what he doesn't seem to explain is, or what he seems to tell in his story, which is what the really fishy part is that the Anons are kind of picking apart, is he says all this stuff that they wanted him to go after Hillary Clinton, and then they asked him to stop, and then he said he described this lady. They were letting this Russian lady, infiltrate all these big Democrat or Republican circles so that they could later use that as the predicate for the Russia collusion hoax investigation. So what they were doing was they were knowingly allowing this Russian agent to infiltrate Republican circles so that later, if President Trump were elected, they could then go and say, look, he's a Russian agent, and start this whole Russia collusion hoax thing. That's the best way I could sum it up. You can watch, he says he's going to put out a blog post about it. Here, one of the Anons had an interesting take on it, saying, so his story is completely fishy, and he acts like he's kind of crazy. He's telling a fantastic story, the kind that folks on the right are inclined to love to hear, to really eat it up. It's more likely he's a tool, an op that's intended to make all the claims against deep state look ludicrous in the mind of the public eye. This Byrne thing will blow up and will be exposed to be a big con from a guy that's basically crazy and after self-aggrandizement and purposely working on behalf of the cabal as a tool. Then the MSM will pour it on about how all these wild, lurid tales of the malfeasance of the deep state and their fellow conspirators are utterly ridiculous, the product of crazy people like Patrick Byrne. This is how they roll. Now, I'm not saying this is the truth, because it could all come out that he's telling the full truth about what happened. And in all likelihood, it wouldn't surprise me one bit. The names that he's continuing to name are people like Peter Strzok and Andrew McCabe and Bill Priestap and all of the people we've seen in the QAnon posts. But a few things that strike me as fishy. First of all, when he comes out and says that they were trying to set up Hillary Clinton, what did occur to me, though, is he says over and over again that the men in black, or these are supposedly the agents who were tasked with coming to him and making that connection between him and Peter Strzok and subsequently James Comey and the rest, that they were very, very against what was happening. They were giving the orders according to him, and they were not very happy about it, and saying that he didn't have to cooperate and that they had never had orders like this before, where he was being told to start a romantic relationship in order to set up people, right? So that one seemed kind of fishy, but maybe maybe the top brass knew they had to tell the lower henchmen the right things so that it didn't seem too obvious that they were trying to set up President Trump and not Hillary, and to effectively help Hillary Clinton. And so we'll have to wait and see what that ends up being. Also, the fact that he's on all of these major news networks, like the same on this day, coming out and saying all this stuff. What was fascinating is he was on Chris Cuomo's show on CNN, and I highly doubt that CNN would ever have anybody on its airwaves who was all about exposing the deep state. So, and you could tell he had this weird tint, a new tinge to his story when he was on Cuomo, talking more about the way that they were going after Hillary as well. And he makes it very clear that he's a Democrat liberal, or he's not. I don't think he said he's a Democrat, but he said he calls himself like a hippie liberal. So this guy's story needs to be vetted out. There's a lot more to it, and I just can't wait to see what happens. I mean, I hope you guys have your popcorn, as Q would say, because the show is getting better and better every single day. One thing I wanted to mention that was, interesting. This guy, Patrick Byrne, the CEO, resigns from Overstock.com, and as soon as he resigns, there is a huge surge in stock value. Now, that 5 or 6% there is a pretty big bump, especially for somebody like the CEO who probably has very, very many shares of that company. So is that a sort of payoff? The market is completely controlled. Q has told us that in the past. If you look at the minus 666 point dip that was intended as a message to Trump and Q, I would presume, of the control that they have over our markets. And it's mostly controlled because you have to understand these people control the bots that do the trading, right? So they can fluctuate the market any which way they want. They have more collective power in fluctuating markets than pretty much anyone else. And when I say they, You guys know exactly who I'm talking about. These deep state global elitists, people like Overstock CEO Patrick Burns' mentor and quote unquote rabbi, Warren Buffett. Isn't that weird? He calls this guy, Patrick Byrne, calls Warren Buffett his rabbi. I don't know. Just a lot of weird stuff here. I'll leave it to you guys to kind of decipher through, but that's pretty much where we're going to wrap it up. A few more things before we go. Come here, watch these videos, share them on your social media, hit the subscribe button if you haven't. Leave your thoughts, theories, and insights below. I want to hear what you guys have to say. Also, be brave. Download the Brave browser. Yes, when you use the link in the description to download the Brave browser, it does help support Just Informed Talk. All you have to do is download it, install it, and run it just like you would Google Chrome or Windows Internet Explorer. And why is this better? Well, A, you get to help the channel out, which is cool. But B, the more important reason is it's a better browser. It actually blocks ads and makes your internet experience that much more enjoyable. So you can actually read the articles that you're trying to read and not just try to decipher through the pop-ups that continually come up. So I always encourage everyone to download the Brave browser and give it a shot for yourself. Also, come find me on Twitter at JustinFormedYou. That's a cool way where we can connect. Also, don't forget to check out JustinFormedNews.com, the official website for Just Informed Talk. Links to the Q stuff, different news sites, breaking news, and of course, the latest videos from the channel. That's JustinFormedNews.com. So, also don't forget to check out Patreon, Patreon.com, the official website, or the crowdfunding website for Just Informed Talk. You can come here, click this button, become a patron. It's a monthly donation. You set it and forget it. Know you're helping create content on a regular basis here. You guys are the reason why I can do this 24/7, 365. Your support is what keeps this channel alive, even in the face of demonetization with YouTube, where they have gone behind the scenes and demonetized every single one of my videos on the channel. I've been able to keep going because of your support. With outside advertising, this channel will stay alive. So your support makes a huge difference. There'll be a link in the description. I also have a GoFundMe set up if you want to make a one-time or anonymous donation. That helps out as well. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. But before we go, we do a segment at the end of each one of these episodes called God's Grace is Greater, where we talk about God's grace and how it is truly greater. For this episode segment, we're going to talk about Psalm 1, the first Psalm. And to me, it's perfect for what we're covering here today. And I hope this message touches your heart and that you can take this message and give it to others. But we're going to read the whole Psalm 1. It says, it's called The Two Ways. It says, "How happy is the man who does not follow the advice of the wicked, or take the path of sinners, or join a group of mockers. Instead, his delight is in the Lord's instruction, and he meditates on it day and night. He is like a tree planted beside streams of water that bears its fruit in season, and whose leaf does not wither. Whatever he does prospers. The wicked are not like this. Instead, they are like chaff that the wind blows away. Therefore, the wicked will not survive the judgment, and the sinners will not be in the community of the righteous. For the Lord watches over the way of the righteous, but the way of the wicked leads to ruin." And that's all we have to remind ourselves. And that's a message I want you to share with your family and friends and loved ones. And it's a message I want to share with you, to remember that walking in God's footsteps just means living a righteous life, putting God above all else, not coming and joining groups of mockers, and don't follow the path of sinners or take advice from the wicked. Rather, you're to meditate on the Lord's instruction and to become like a tree planted beside streams of water. Now, what does that mean? That means you want to plant your roots deep so that you are there in God's glorious creation, helping to share that message of God's instruction to others, that we are instructed to live a righteous life. And if we do these things, and if we help one another, and if we work and live a life that is clean and pure and do everything we can, we may not be perfect. We're going to make mistakes. We're not going to be the perfect people of the world, but we're going to make mistakes. And every time we do, we're going to say, "God, help me. I'm sorry. Help me help others. Help me become a better man. Help me have the courage and strength and wisdom to become a better man. Help me be the man that you deserve so I can be the man the rest of the world deserves." These are the things that we have to live toward every single day. We have to work toward every day, getting closer to God and living a righteous life. So that's where I'm going to go ahead and leave it. And I want you to share that message with your family, friends, loved ones, your spouse, whoever, people you meet on the street, strangers. Just share that message And that is how you multiply your blessings and help others find God. That's where I'm going to go ahead and leave it. Thanks for watching this episode. Remember, come here, click the big red subscribe button. If you haven't already, make sure you hit the bell for notifications and hit it, headbutt it, elbow it, knee it, whatever. Hit the like button if you guys like this content and want to see me make more. That's going to be it for me. Thanks for watching this episode of Just Informed Talk. My name is Craig. Godspeed and God bless each and every one of you, Patriots.